Even with Moses, burning bush was a bit of a puzzle. He had to walk over and find out what was going on, didn't he? Now 1 Corinthians 14, verses 29 to 33 reads, "Let the prophet speak 2 or 3, and let the other judge. If anything be revealed to another that sits by, let the first hold his peace. For ye may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn, and all may be comforted. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints." People think this means that your gift is subject to you. No, that's not what it means. And it also doesn't mean that everybody can prophesy. He says you may all prophesy one by one. He was specifically addressing the prophets in that church, not necessarily everyone. You may all prophesy one by one. It was about taking turns and having manners and not trying to talk over each other, which was apparently happening. And it still happens in a lot of churches. Everybody wants to talk at the same time, and all that does is cause confusion. And it says the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets, meaning your spirit is subject to you. You can exercise some self-control. You can wait your turn. Didn't mean more than that. Because like I said before, I might buy my dog a collar. That's his collar, but he's my dog. God might have given you a gift, but yours still his. And something we also got to understand in discovering your purpose is that you're going to encounter difficulties. You're going to encounter problems. You're going to encounter warfare. You're going to encounter what they call in physics the second law of thermodynamics, which is the law of entropy, the law of chaos. Because of the fall of man, things tend to move toward chaos on their own. You don't even got to do anything. Things move toward chaos. If I sit and let my car sit parked out there for a few days, the brakes will start to seize up because it's a Kia and they have that problem. Yeah, if you're not going to drive for a couple of days, you got to start the car, move it back and forth, pump the brakes, or they're going to seize. Chaos. They don't even have to do anything for it to happen. It'll happen by itself. Just like metal will rust, or things, wood will rot, so on and so forth. I just built a porch in front of my house a couple months ago. And it's a good sized porch. And I did it with treated wood, so it'll last longer, but guess what? 50 years from now, that porch won't be there. That porch will probably need to be replaced in probably about 20 years. Assuming I paint it. It'll still need to be replaced. Why? Because there is such a thing as chaos. Things tend to move toward disorder. And here's the thing about self-will. Self-will is part of the fall. It will always lead toward chaos. David did what he wanted. Do you remember what happened when David did what he wanted? There was that time he tried to count how many soldiers he had, and then God sent a plague that killed a whole lot of people. Then there was a time, David did what he wanted in a couple of different things. When one of his sons raped one of his own sisters, you'll find that in 2 Samuel 13, 1 to 15, and verse 32. When this happened, David did not put Amnon to death, and that's what he should have done. David refused to carry out the law. And so since David wouldn't do it, Absalom went and did it. And he went and killed Amnon. And then David made the mistake of banishing Absalom for it, which he shouldn't have done, because Absalom was just obeying the law. This was a natural progression of David's self-will. 2 Samuel 11, verses 1 to 27. There was some self-will going on there, where he went and took some other man's wife and eventually killed him for it. Self-will will progress until you inevitably, especially as a leader, if you follow self-will, inevitably you will abuse your position of authority to accomplish your will, to get what you want. Just like David did, because he was the king, he could send for that woman. The king sends for you, you gotta come. Because he was the king, he could send a message. Put this guy at the front line. It's a sealed message. He sends it with the man he's going to kill is carrying the message. Make sure this guy gets killed. That was an abuse of the authority that God had given. The first sin was as a man, just lust. But then he sent for the woman. That was an abuse of his authority. And everything that followed after was an abuse of that authority. And who knows, maybe part of why he didn't put Amnon to death was his own guilty conscience, that, you know, he maybe thought he was being merciful. But he had repented and Amnon had not. And so Nathan's rebuke, if you look at it, which is right before what happens with Amnon, part of the prophecy is the sword will never depart from your house. And here's the tricky thing, especially if you're called to leadership. Remember what I said about being willing to be corrected. It's not just about being corrected by people in higher authority than you. You may also get corrected by people under your authority. And I know a lot of the church teaches against this. We act like, they'll say, oh, you can never correct your pastor. Only a prophet can correct a prophet. Nonsense. Nonsense. And I'll prove it to you. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, the prophet Nathan comes and delivers a blistering rebuke to David. You said, well, David was just the king. Nathan was the prophet. Who do you think had more authority, the prophet or the king? When blind Bartimaeus was screaming for help, he did not say, son of Nathan, have mercy on me, did he? He said, son of David, have mercy on me. The reason why he was calling that, he was recognizing him as the king. And it was the anointing of the king of Israel that opened the blind eyes. So no, the king was higher in authority. The highest authority in the kingdom is the king. Nathan was a subject of the king. He was an Israelite. Therefore, King Nathan. That's how it works. And some people will think Nathan had more authority. No, it's not true. Because David was also a prophet. In fact, if you examine the life of David, he was almost like a Old Testament apostle. Because a king exerts the same kind of territorial authority. Well, kings didn't just replace prophets. God specifically, when God transitioned them to the, because Nathan was a prophet, he wasn't the prophet over Israel. He sure wasn't Elijah. Because you had some prophets who were the prophet over Israel, like Elijah or Elisha. But even then, they weren't the king. They weren't running the country. That wasn't their place. That wasn't their job. They had an important job. That's not to say that they're to be disrespected or anything, but the bottom line was that that David was the king. David and Nathan was not. And yet, Nathan came and brought correction. Now, he did it respectfully. He did it very tactfully. He didn't lead with the sword. He didn't come and say, hey, David, how you doing? The sword will never depart from your house. No, that's not where he started, was it? Told a nice little parable and started there. Yes, prophet. Yes, but that was a couple of centuries prior. The point I'm making here is, at that time, with David, at the time of David, the king was the highest authority in the land. Because in a kingdom, the king is at the top of the food chain, so to speak. And so anyone who's an Israelite is under that king's authority. And so there are times where someone who's under your authority may very well advise you. They may very well correct you. They may very well they may even have a word from God that you're supposed to listen to. And very often we get out of the will of God because we think, no, there's no way that someone under my authority, no, and we put the blinders on. We're not willing to even look at anything anybody has to say if we perceive them to be in lesser authority than we are, and that's a grave mistake. So at the same time, I also have to say this: before you go and try to rebuke someone who's higher in authority than you are, you better make sure God sent you. And you better make sure you're right, because the soul you may jeopardize might be your own. So we got to understand that we must be willing to hear from God no matter who He's speaking through, even if it's someone lower in authority than us. And especially those of us who are married men, we know this. We know this all too well. We have many experiences in which our wife, who is under our authority, will tell us that we're wrong, and she ends up being right sometimes. Some people will say all the time, and that's not true either. But and many of us who are married men will have had, by the time we're married for a while, we've had a few experiences where we wish we had listened to our wife. And that she's under your authority, and there's times she's going to be right. And maybe it may happen, depending on what's going on. It may be once in a while. It might be quite often. It might be all the time, depending. Depends on who you're dealing with. And so, what's the solution here? How do we make sure that we walk in the counsel of God? Because here's the thing: if you remain in the will of God, it is inevitable that you will find your purpose. It's inevitable that He will reveal it to you. It is impossible not to fulfill your commission if you remain in the will of God. So here's the solution. There's basically 7 things that you need to do. And some people will make it more complicated than this, but I like to keep it simple. There's 7 basic things you need to do to walk in the whole counsel of God for your life and find your purpose. And here it is. The first thing, and I would say the most important, is to love God more than anything. You know, just like it says in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. So that's the first thing. That's number 1. Number 2 is to submit to authority. Because and I see this problem a lot. You have people who, they want to be in ministry, or they think they've got a calling, but they can't submit to authority. And that's a problem, because my Bible still says rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Or some translations say rebellion is the sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness is like iniquity and idolatry. You've got to submit to authority. All authority comes from God. You know, I've got this little job that I work, and fortunately, the people who are in charge are not absolute jerks like some of the people at the last job, but they there's times that they're wrong. There's times I don't necessarily agree with their methodology, but guess what? They're in charge, and I'm not. So guess what? I do it their way. I don't reinvent the wheel. This is what they're paying me to do. I'm going to do it the way they said. Simple. That's a lot less stressful. I don't got to worry about coming up with a new way to do it, because these are the rules. Okay, this is how they want to do it. I'll do it their way. And at the last job, that really varied depending on who was in charge that day. And I remember hearing some of my coworkers at that job complaining about the different managers. And I walked up and I said, you know, I don't have a problem with any manager here. There's even some that don't like me. I don't care. Each one has their own style. Some are more strict. Some are, you know, there was one named Stephanie who's super strict, and oh my goodness, she was really, really strict, and she was hard to deal with sometimes, but it is what it is. When Stephanie's running the show that night, you do it Stephanie's way. And then there was a guy, Fernando, we called him Fern for short. Fern didn't care what you did. You know, if you had one more customer for the night and it was like 3 minutes to closing, he's like, get rid of them. He'd tell you that. I was like, okay. He's like, just get him off the line and we're going to go home. So Fern was a lot more easygoing. And so you go with the flow. You got to submit to authority. That doesn't mean you do things that are wrong or evil for them, but submit to authority. And the funny thing is, most of us can understand it on a job. It's just in other situations we don't like to submit to authority because we perceive that we don't have to. And that's a mistake. You know, it's just like I often say, honor your father and your mother doesn't come with, there's no escape clause. It doesn't say honor your father and your mother if they're perfect. It doesn't say honor your father and your mother if they're good parents. Honor your father and your mother, they like you. No. It doesn't say that at all, does it? It says honor your father and your mother. So you got to do it. You got to obey God. It has nothing to do with their behavior. And it's the same thing with submitting to authority. It has less to do with the person in authority than it does with submitting to God. And here's the real key to submitting to authority. The key is to trust God. And you look at the same thing in a marriage. It's not your husband you got to trust, it's God. Trust that God will even protect you through his mistakes, because he's going to make some sooner or later. Even the most brilliant, wonderful husband will make a mistake here and there. And most husbands will make many. That's just how it is. We're just as human as you are, go figure. Mistakes are going to happen. In fact, the job I currently work at, it exists because of mistakes. That's basically all we do at our job. We fix mistakes. Mistakes are part of life. And but you got to trust God. That's ultimately who you're trusting. You're not trusting the leader, you're trusting God. And there's several kinds of authority you need to submit to. There's earthly authority, there's kingdom authority, both above and below. Because you're not just submitting to people above you. There's times where you also have to listen, maybe not submit to, but you have to listen to people who are below you in authority. I remember when I was in the U.S. Marine Corps, I was given a tour of one of the bases by the captain who was recruiting me. And we stopped to talk to a sergeant who was doing some maintenance on some kind of artillery equipment. I think it was a howitzer. And we talked to him briefly, and then we moved on. He said, he says, I know some things about howitzers. And he said some things that he knew about them. He said, but I'll never know as much as Sergeant so-and-so. So when it comes to the howitzers, even though I'm in command, and he's under my authority, I have to defer to his expertise because he knows more about that. It's a part of this thing about not just submission to authority, but even how to exercise authority. You got to have the humility to understand there may be people God places under your authority who will know more about certain things than you do. That on that particular subject, they're the expert, not you. And so you need to listen to what they have to say. Sure, you might be in charge and you might make the final decision, but it's in your best interest to listen to what they have to say because they know more than you about that. Remember that the fivefold ministry, as we like to call it, from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 10 to 12. The apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. All five of them are for the perfecting of the saints. Because sometimes somebody says, well, I'm an apostle, I'm going to listen to the prophet. I don't have to listen to the evangelist. The teacher can't tell me what to do. Really? The Bible says they're all for the perfecting of the saints. And let's say you're an apostle. You are one of the saints. So guess what? The teacher was placed in the body to perfect you. Even though they may be below you in authority. They still have something to bring to the table that can benefit you. That having been said, never reject the truth. No matter who it's come from, do not reject the truth. And a lot of us, we find ways to reject the truth. And I would highly recommend going on our YouTube channel and watching that particular teaching. There's two teachings on it. Well, learn to trust the truth. But a lot of us, we find all kinds of ways to reject truth. And then we wonder why we can't hear from God, or why God won't show us what our purpose is. Well, you don't even want to reject the truth. How can you be trusted? So far we got love God more than anything, submit to authority. The third thing you need to do is to examine yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 27 to 30. It says, for as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death until he come. Sometimes we don't trust the truth because we can't discern truth, but then that points to a deeper problem. And that brings us back to the whole issue of sonship. Because if you're functioning as a son, you're in a position to receive truth. Even though my dad didn't like me, I spent a lot of time around him, and I liked him. I was a little kid. I didn't know. I wasn't really aware that he didn't really like me, and I always wanted to be around him. So whenever he was working on something, guess who was there? I'm pretty sure I'm a much better carpenter than my brother is. And uh, and the fact that my father probably didn't like me that much, he worked me kind of hard. In fact, he worked me so hard I was 8 years old and I had a six-pack. I had muscles. And I was physically stronger than my brother who was older than me. And to this day, I'm smaller than him, but I'm probably a lot stronger. And that's probably part of why, because my father worked me so hard. But here's the thing, because I could submit to his authority and I spent time with him, I got to learn from him, even when he wasn't necessarily trying to teach me anything. Simply because I was there. And sometimes he would teach me stuff because I was the one who was there. His other kids were somewhere else. I just happened to be in the room, and I guess he wanted to vent or tell somebody something. And Sam was the only one in the room, so he told me. And so I got to learn a lot of things that the others didn't learn. That's part of the key to being able to discern truth. Spend time with him for its own sake. I remember how, my father would come home from work and I would, he'd go sit in his easy chair and I'd bring him his slippers. I'd take his shoes off and his socks off and I'd put his slippers on. I wasn't trying to get any special favors out of him. And I remember years later he had said to me, he said, you never asked me for anything. Because all his other children, whenever they were nice to him, it was because they wanted something. I didn't. All I wanted was to be around my father. You'd be amazed what you will see and what you will learn, what God will show you if you spend time with him just because you want to be around him. Stop worrying about deep revelation. Stop worrying about, God tell me this, God tell me that. He'll tell you. Relax. Enjoy being the son. Because believe me, as far as God using you, he might wear you out. So relax right now that he's not doing a whole lot with you just yet. This is if you're in that stage of the game, you're in the easy part. Don't be in a hurry. So you got to examine yourself. So we're going to move forward from that. I went back to somebody that asked a bit of a question there. So the third thing is examine yourself. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eats and drinks unworthily eats and drinks damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. So examine yourself. And here's some ways to examine yourself. Reconsider your opinions. You may even want to, I'm a big fan of taking a big old yellow legal pad and writing stuff down. Write down your major opinions on different things. And then examine them. Put them to the test. Is this opinion of mine godly? Is this opinion of mine, does it agree with God or does it disagree with God? And you'll learn a whole lot about yourself, that maybe some of your opinions are wrong. That maybe some of the things you believe aren't really that right. And that's not a condemnation. This is not some form of, self-flagellation. The purpose of this is to examine yourself. Because remember, it says, let a man examine yourself. That's not a suggestion, it's a command. Sure, there's times God will tell you stuff that's wrong with you, but at the same time, you have a responsibility to look at you. So reconsider your opinions. Another thing you can do is examine the details of your life's events. Your major decisions, your reactions. The good decisions and the bad decisions. Because when you examine the details of your life, one thing I like to say is that destiny's in the details. A lot of times, if you actually take the time to closely examine the details of your major decisions, the major transitions in your life, the things you've been drawn to, and how various things worked out, patterns will emerge. Inevitably, patterns, it's inescapable. There will be patterns. And then very often from those patterns, you can start to piece together the purpose of God for your life. I've been telling people what to do since I was a little kid. I couldn't help it. I was the little kid, and when the family went to the beach, I'd have I'd have a whole team of kids building something out of the sand. So it's kind of obvious God called me to some kind of leadership. I tell people what to do. That's kind of my job description. Examine the details, and you'll probably see a lot of your purpose in those details. Another thing to do in examining yourself, what if you're an introvert? Well, if you're an introvert, don't worry about that either. I'm an introvert. I didn't make friends with those kids. I was just able to persuade them to build the thing I wanted them to build. So I didn't I didn't become friends with them. I don't remember any of their names, but I remember the things we built. Anyhow, if you're an introvert, being an introvert doesn't stop you from being a leader. In fact, the most common personality type of CEOs is introvert, what they call an INTJ, an introverted, intuitive, thoughtful, judgmental. Because introverted people who are intuitive, thoughtful, and judgmental tend to be really good decision makers. And good decision makers are good leaders. So another thing you can do to examine yourself is to ask yourself the question, especially when you do that little exercise where you're writing down the major events of your life or the major decisions. Ask yourself, did you do your will or his? And in either case, why? Were you acting on the real reason or one that sounded good? Then number 4 is to closely study the Word of God and obey it. It's like it says in Psalm 119, verse 9. Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path. Well, actually, that's a different verse. I think that verse is the wherewith shall a young man cleanse his way, by taking heed to your word. Closely study it. Remember Hebrews 12, verse 4, that we like to quote so much. For the word of God is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and of the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. You want discernment? You want understanding? Study the word. Because it's going to discern the thoughts and intents of your heart first. But it'll also teach you how to discern other things. Because as you get to know the word, you'll start to recognize patterns. It's a lot harder to be deceived. Not impossible, but it's harder to be deceived. Number 5 is stop giving God quality time and start giving him quantity time. Spend time with God. Especially if you don't got anything going on right now, and you want to be in ministry, but you got nothing to do. Nobody's inviting you to speak. Well, you got nothing to do. You got no excuse. You may as well spend time with God. Number 6, repent of self-will and turn from it. And then number 7, make a renewed commitment to a deeper fellowship with God. And run screaming from self-will whenever it raises its ugly head. And if you do those things, you will find yourself in the will of God. And you'll find yourself growing. And as you grow, God will show you more things. He'll reveal your purpose. Sometimes you'll just know it. I remember when God first showed me specifically which office he called me to. I wasn't asking about it. It didn't even occur to me to ask. All I was doing was, I had my Bible. It was a different Bible from this, but I had just come back into the fold after being backslidden for a number of years after college. And I had just come back in the fold. And in all my excitement of being saved again, I spent about a week doing nothing but reading the Gospels day and night. And about halfway through that week, I came across something in the Gospels where God showed me my call. Didn't give me all the details, but I knew. I just knew. There was an absolute knowledge. And like I said, I wasn't asking. And the truth is, you don't necessarily even have to ask. Was Moses asking? No, Moses was minding his own business. Taking care of some other man's sheep on the backside of the mountain. You look at Ezekiel, he's minding his own business. Isaiah, he was minding his own business. Jeremiah was minding his own business. Nehemiah, minding his own business. Obadiah, all of them. They were minding their own business. Most of them. They didn't have to try. Be a worshiper. Work on your relationship with God as a son. And it is absolutely impossible for him to not show you your purpose and guide you into it. I hope this was useful. I hope it was helpful. If it was, feel free to share it. Meanwhile, God bless you and God keep you.